Hey team, happy Tuesday. This is our weekly conference call. Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint, Faith and Personal Development, here with the team at Red Earth. We've been doing these every month now, or every week now, for a few months. And it's interesting, the foresight that John had to bring kind of an encouragement and motivational kind of faith-based call each week to the team in the middle of some of the most troubling times that I know many of us have lived through. It's really wild to me. I was actually really humbled by that the other day. I was like, man, here we are in the middle of this craziness, and yet we have the opportunity to jump on a call in the middle of the crazy to hopefully bring some perspective and some positivity and some encouragement and inspiration to the table when it seems like everything around us is trying to take that away. So I don't know if you guys feel that way or not, but I know that in my own life, it feels like every day I wake up, there is something that's trying to rob me of the hope that I have, something that's trying to rob me of the direction that I'm going in, something that's trying to rob me of peace and joy and positivity and all these things that we aspire to. So I'm grateful to be here with you guys today. As always, I appreciate you jumping on. And, you know, I would be remiss not to speak of the things that are going on in our world around us. I don't want to dwell on them per se, and certainly not getting into the opinion of it all, but I think that we have to have a keen awareness of the environment in which we are living in, and it is a pretty wild one at that. I know we've got teams all over the country, and so everywhere all over the country is dealing with issues right now, and I don't know what it's like in your particular city, but there's a lot of unrest, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of negative energy. There is so much right now that is warring outside of us, trying to get inside of us. And so that being said, there's a few different things that I want to approach today, and you guys know me well enough by now to know that I get pictures and I see things. And what I try to do is translate those things into something that's true and sustainable that we can hold on to. And so today, there are really three different things that I want to share. I don't know how they tie together just yet, but one is of a hurricane, another is of a magnifying glass, and then the third is a passage from Ephesians 4. So we'll see. We'll see where this goes. I have my work cut out for me. I spent 10 years of my life in the insurance business as a sales professional, an agent with North Carolina Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, was responsible for selling homeowners, auto insurance, life health insurance for one of the largest domestic insurance companies in the country. Southern Farm Bureau is based out of Jackson, Mississippi, so they have presence in the South pretty prominently. We were at North Carolina Farm Bureau, and specifically for us in North Carolina, those of us on the coast, we had to deal with hurricanes often. And for those of you who have experienced hurricanes or know about hurricanes, they're a pretty dynamic natural phenomenon. I don't know where our Alabama team is. If you guys are kind of in a tornado-prone area, I know you're kind of up inland as much, so the hurricanes aren't necessarily as big as they are on the coast. But for us on the coast, hurricanes are always a big deal. And so hurricane season begins in June, kind of runs through October, and it's always getting our attention. And yet you're looking at June, July, August, September, 5 months of the year that you're still selling insurance in the middle of hurricane season. Now, the interesting thing is when you were selling insurance in hurricane season, you can't buy insurance when there's a hurricane, right? So it's about preparation ahead of the storm instead of responding in the middle of the storm to actually prepare yourself and get the coverage you need. And so when it comes to hurricanes, they were a really big deal for us. And folks were always very emotionally charged. A couple years ago, Hurricane Florence made a direct landfall right here in Wilmington. It was a national kind of event. There was a ton of flooding and so forth. Every year it seems there's a hurricane that's forming off the coast, and always talking about the Outer Banks of North Carolina or Wilmington even. And so we have to deal with this. Why I wanted to bring up hurricanes is because when you have something like a hurricane, it looks like it's an incredible difficulty. It looks like it's a storm, and it looks like it's something that could potentially knock you off course. But hurricanes often presented the greatest opportunity for us as sales individuals within the insurance world. And so the phrase that I got when I was thinking through this hurricane analogy is, we don't need to miss an opportunity that is disguised as a difficulty. You see, a lot of times I think we missed opportunities because we call them difficulties. We have something that's difficult. We have an obstacle in front of us. We have a challenging situation around us, and we miss it as an opportunity because we're focusing on the negative dynamics of that situation or event rather than the opportunity it presents. And the interesting thing about a hurricane is there is one place in a hurricane that is calm, and that is right in the middle of the storm. If you're in the center of the hurricane is so phenomenal because the winds are going so violently around in a circle in the cyclone that in the middle it creates a peaceful eye. Having lived through the eye of a hurricane, it's the craziest thing you've ever experienced because it is turmoil and craziness and just, it's like everything's coming to an end, and then all of a sudden, snap, and you're in the eye of the storm. So the eye of the storm is the safest place in a hurricane. And so right now, in the midst of the craziness in the world around us, we've got rioting and looting and protests and, conversations about viruses and economy situations and presidential elections. And we can look at that as a hurricane, and we can freak out, and we can panic, and we can get stressed, and we can become worrisome, and it can erode every ounce of joy and hope and energy and opportunity that we have. Or we can look at it and choose to be centered. Choose to go to the center of the storm in that still place, the eye of the storm, and say, man, the world is crazy around me, but I am staying in a place of centeredness. I am not getting outside of center, because when we get outside of center, we participate in the chaos around us. And so I just have this picture in our own lives of the storm going on around us. Are we choosing to participate in the storm, or are we staying centered in the center of the eye? And so my encouragement for you guys today is, whatever it is that you do, stay in the center. Stay centered. It might be crazy around you, but you have the opportunity to be centered and stay in the eye of the storm. In the midst of the chaos, you can stay centered. And secondarily, with this kind of analogy, is do not miss an opportunity disguised as a difficulty. Back when we were selling insurance, when hurricanes were coming, it was a great opportunity to call up a client and say, hey, Mr. Smith, it's Matt Ham with Farm Bureau. Wanted to make sure that you've looked over your insurance. We've got this hurricane coming. Do you have a minute to talk about it? And most of the times they would be interested to do that then, when as 6 months ago, they had no interest in it. So when you have situations like this, sometimes it's the greatest opportunity to reach out to someone, not to sell them anything, but just to let them know, hey, it's crazy out there. I know we haven't talked in a while. How are you doing? This is an opportunity for you guys to establish, build, and foster relationships, and an opportunity to reach out and just check on people. Maybe you have a list of warm clients, folks that have visited before, you've toured before, they're kind of thinking about buying, they're not sure. Maybe you have a new prospect that's just reached out. Be human and recognize that there is a chaotic situation, a storm, and use it as an opportunity to invest in another person, just to be there. One of the things that I have the privilege of doing is I actually get to pray with a nursing home every Monday afternoon. There's a local nursing home right up the road, and one of the staff is a friend, and about 10 weeks ago, she said, Matt, will you come pray with our staff on Mondays, because it's so stressful for us. We're terrified that, the virus is going to get in here and it's going to kill all the patients and we're going to be exposed and all that kind of stuff. And then it began to be about, man, we just need prayer, because we long for this. Like, we need to walk through these days with joy and with hope. And so we've begun praying with this group. Well, yesterday, it's interesting because the staff there is multi-ethnic staff. And yesterday I looked up and there were 7 staff members that came. There were 2 African-American women, a young African-American man, and then 4 white females and myself. And I said, you know what? This is not something that the news is focusing on right now. Here is a place of business, nonetheless, where people of different races and different ethnicities and genders and ages are coming together on the lawn to pray about their place of business. They're here to pray that they would have more joy, that they would have more hope, that they would bring more light and love and encouragement. They are here because they don't want to participate in the chaos of the hurricane. They want to be in the center. And yet that's not on the news, you know? And so everything within me wants to fight to go, hey, you're missing the picture. There's still goodness in the world. There's still opportunities. There's still positivity happening. But it's not about media attention. It's about just doing it. And so use these moments as an opportunity to be your very best self, to be excellent in every single way. Listen, it's easy to throw in the chips. It's easy right now to just give up and focus on all the negativity and just go, the world's going to hell in a handbasket and I might as well just, hit the bottle of vodka as the ship is sinking. I mean, it's easy, to be like on the Titanic and, let's just go ahead and tip back the bottle as this thing goes down. That's not who we're called to be. There's nothing excellent about that. There's nothing excellent about that. One of my favorite quotes from a movie is the movie A League of Their Own. A League of Their Own is fantastic. It's about women's baseball during the war. Tom Hanks plays one of his best roles, in my opinion. Jimmy Dugan, kind of a defunct and broken down old baseball player who actually is an alcoholic, but he's getting charged to coach a women's baseball team, so he will draw fans to the stadium. And he ends up developing just a great relationship with these ladies. And these women are struggling, many of them, because their husbands are away at war. And some of them husbands have died. And there's one particular character, Dottie Hinson, and this Gina Davis is who plays the role. And later in the movie, they're getting ready for their playoffs. And it's a really big moment for the team. And Dottie, who's their star player, Gina Davis's character, realizes that her husband has come back from the war and he's now safe. And she's so distraught. She's like, I just got to go with my husband. And so one night during the middle of the night while the team's getting ready for their playoff, she's packing up the car and she's heading home. And so Jimmy Dugan, Tom Hanks' character, is getting ready to go back to the bus, and he's kind of going, all right, girls, here we are. We're ready to go. And he's walking to the bus, and he looks over and he sees Dottie leaving. He's like, what are you doing? And she said, I'm going with my husband. We're going back home. And he's like, you're quitting? Right? And she looks at him and she said, it just got too hard. And this is the movie line. Tom Hanks looks at her and goes, it's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great. And later in the movie, Dottie actually returns for their final game of the season. And he looks at her and he says, got scared of the bears, did you? Because they were going back to the mountains or wherever they lived. And it was just it's a great movie. You got to watch it if you've never seen it, or to watch it again. But the point in that is, too often we look at the chaos around us and we say, it's just too hard. But he reminds us that there's part of excellence that is difficult. But an excellent person sees opportunity in the midst of difficulty. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great. So that is kind of the first snapshot today, is look at the difficulties as opportunities and know that it's going to be difficult, but step up and step into it. The second picture that I had, really strange, is of a magnifying glass. I was offered the opportunity to go out on the ocean the other day to go fishing. I hadn't been fishing in like a year. I used to have a boat. I used to fish all the time, and I loved it. We had to sell the boat. I miss the ocean. It's my favorite place in the world to be out in the ocean. And my buddy Rick asked me to go, so we go out into the ocean, and I just had this strange picture of a magnifying glass. And what the Lord was really kind of speaking to me through this was the heart of a man or woman is a magnifying glass. Whatever you let in, it magnifies. If you let ugliness in, if you let despair in, if you let evil or selfishness or greed in, it gets magnified in the heart of man. That's why you don't see people that are a little bit greedy, because once you give in to greed, it's just, I'm all greedy, right? And it's a powerful thought to think about, what are you magnifying in your heart? What are you magnifying in your life? You know, if you look at an ant through a magnifying glass, that joker's that big. And you're like, it's an ant. But if you take the magnifying glass away, it's a tiny little ant. You see, the heart is a magnifying glass. Whatever you let into it, it's going to magnify it. But the interesting thing about that is in the world around us right now, we are challenged to magnify a lot of things. And so our hearts, as we let these things into our heart, the difficulties into our heart wants to magnify it, to make it to seem like it's bigger than it actually is. But what's the crazy thing about a magnifying glass, and this is the Lord speaking here, this is powerful. What happens to light when you magnify it? It sets things on fire. And now I'm a boy, and we got some ladies on the call. I think Brian's on. As a kid, as a boy, you take a magnifying glass and you let the sunlight shine on it, and you put a little piece of straw or leaves underneath it, and it will light the straw or the leaves on fire. Because when light is magnified, it becomes concentrated and focused that it can burn something. So when we let light and goodness and joy into our heart, that is what becomes kind of that consuming fire ablaze. If you ever see somebody who is so overwhelmed with joy and goodness and light, it's because they have let that into their heart, and that is what is being magnified. So we have a choice as to what we magnify in this season. And our focus needs to be on magnifying goodness and excellence and light and joy. And if we're not magnifying those things, then we're magnifying the adverse of those things. And the ants look like tarantulas, right? And tarantulas look like rhinoceroses, right? You know, we can magnify bad things and they look bigger, but if we magnify good things, that's what consumes us. It sets us afire. So that's the second picture that I have to share with you guys today. The hurricane is the first, talking about opportunities, not getting lost in the chaos, staying centered. The second is a magnifying glass. What are you magnifying with your life? What are you magnifying with your heart? And the fourth is just simply a passage from the book of Ephesians that I will leave us with as encouragement today. This is Ephesians chapter 4, written by the Apostle Paul. He was a Jewish man who was called by the Lord. He hated God. He had a radical transformation where he saw a vision of the Lord, and he was blinded for a few days, and then he regained his sight, and he went and spent 14 years of his life in preparation to begin to take the ministry of the testimony of Christ into the Gentile world. So he brought it from a Jewish culture into the rest of the world. Ephesus was kind of a port city. It was outside of Jerusalem, so he had gone out to that area and he had helped establish this church, this body of people, and now he's writing them a letter of encouragement after he had left them to kind of carry out, this legacy and this testimony that he had shared with them, right? So just imagine the whole story of the picture here. Now, he's interestingly enough writing this letter as he's imprisoned in another area. So he says, and this is Ephesians 4, I therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. And then he gives 4 commands. With all humility and gentleness, with patience, and bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit. So when we look at how do we stay centered, how do we focus? What should we focus on? Paul right here gives us 4 things that are great areas of focus: humility, gentleness, patience, and love. Humility, gentleness, patience, and love. Eager to maintain unity. So when we long for unity in the world, unity is found through humility, gentleness, patience, and love. And we have to remember that, be mindful of it. And, again, I know we are in interesting times. There's a lot of crazy things going on around us. But today I hope that these pictures and stories give you hope and give you the opportunity to potentially shift your focus and question what it is that you're magnifying in your heart. And whatever it is, may we replace it with humility, gentleness, patience, and love. That's all for today's call, friends. I appreciate you joining on. Matt Ham, if you need to reach out or talk one-to-one through anything, 910-619-4644, or you can email me, matt@uprint.life. I appreciate you guys and look forward to hearing more about your continued success and excellence. And you guys have a fantastic and fabulous week.